Hello! Welcome to my review of the Acer V3 574. This is the latest 2015 model from this lineup from Acer. Let's start with the physical attributes of the V3. The overall design language of the V3 574 leans more toward a sleek and professional-looking build. The black and silver theme and squared-off edges make it very understated, but the laptop does have some interesting design elements to it to make it a little ostentatious. Most notably its patterned aluminum cover. Take a look at this. At very close scrutiny, the cover has shiny vertical stripe patterns, but they are not that flashy at a distance. I quite like it, and it makes for a distinct look without being too obnoxious. And as so, I don't think it is that bothersome if you are not really into the design. Apart from the lid cover, the rest of the laptop is made out of hard plastic. Now, don't get me wrong, the feel is not cheap. It is very sturdy, hardly any flex, and no concerning creaks. It passes my, what I like to call, student's carry test. If you are a student, chances are you are like me. I carry my laptop in arms between classes and around campus, as I am often too lazy to constantly stuff it inside and pull it out of my bag. I am not saying you can go around abusing the heck out of it, but it just means you really don't have to be consciously delicate when handling it. Speaking of that, the V3 574 is a 15.6-inch laptop, which means it is relatively bigger in dimensions compared to the portable ones that you mostly see. The laptop is probably intended for desk use, but having said that, it actually is slim and light enough to be carried around. Look, I can fit it in my backpack made for 13-inch laptops, and inside it I can bear its weight of 2.4 kilograms. Granted, you make use of your two shoulders to carry it. I tried lugging it around with one shoulder. At first, you may think the weight is not that bad, but you will quickly grow tired. Let's take a look at the ports. On the left is a Kensington lock, an exhaust, a VGA port, an Ethernet port, a full-sized HDMI port, two USB 3 ports, and your combo jack. By the way, this exhaust is always pumping out hot air even when the laptop is not doing much heavy tasks. It's not burning hot temperature, but you may want to be mindful of that. On the right side, you just have your port for the power, a bay for what used to be a DVD drive for my case, and a USB 2 port. I removed the DVD drive and replaced it with an SSD. On the front are two LED status indicators for power and charging, and an SD card slot. The card is not quite flush when inserted. This ample amount of ports will likely meet all of your basic requirements. I do appreciate that there are USB ports on both sides. Whether you are left-handed or right-handed, you can use a wired mouse. Also, you can avoid crowding your USB devices. One thing I really take into good consideration about a laptop is the screen. This model of the V3 is equipped with a 1920 by 1080 Full HD resolution IPS matte display. The resolution is sharp enough at this screen size and at the distance you will be looking at. I give it a lot of plus points that it has a matte finishing. There is a variant with just the 1366 by 768 HD display. But seriously though, that model may save you a few cash, but that display is not only lower in resolution, but it's also glossy. Matte finish is very nice on a screen, as it mitigates glare, which means it does not have to compete with reflections to make itself functionally visible. This is also good, as this compensates for the very low brightness of the panel. So yes, it is not that bright, but it is more than sufficient. Also, a lot of the brighter screens are glossy, and between this and those, I would choose this. It is not glaring under low light, it is good at ample room lighting, and look, it handles pretty well in bright areas. Maybe not under direct sunlight, but this is not a smartphone, so that is a very unlikely usage scenario. I am not saying the low brightness can't be a deal breaker though. Some people might really require high brightness on their screen. For me, this is just fine, as in addition, it does not tire my eyes out quickly. The matte finish also helps a lot with the viewing angles. You certainly can work with this from the side. Other people can easily peek at what you're doing too. One huge thing that might be considered a con for this display is color reproduction. It does not cover all the range of colors of sRGB or Adobe RGB, unlike the ones found in higher-end models. But it does not mean that it displays awful images. Now, I am not your established laptop reviewer, so I do not have colorimetric measurements. But I can visually say your reds will still look red, your blues will still look blue, your yellows will still... you get the point. Now, instead of numbers, let's just do a qualitative evaluation by placing this side by side with a MacBook Pro with Retina display, as this can be considered a reference standard of a good and accurate display with almost full coverage of the color gamut. Aside from the display of the V3 leaning more towards a cooler temperature, in my perspective, it fares very well in comparison. It is not a bad display that it totally messes up how a picture is supposed to look, but placing it beside the MacBook, the difference indeed are apparent. Some details in an image, especially those that involve different shades and gradations of color, may not be depicted as it should, and some colors may not look as vivid. Again, the images are not terrible. If you do a lot of image inspection, if color accuracy is indeed paramount for you, like for example, it is involved in your work or serious hobby, then I would advise investing on the higher-end accurate displays. If not, then you will appreciate this display. Comparing this display to the many TN glossy panels found within this price bracket, the monitor here is way better. The Acer V3 is equipped with a full-sized keyboard. You have your standard layout and a number pad. Now, I am not a very picky typist. Look, I type like some sort of technology noob having the first experience of using a keyboard. That's why I have typed long articles on much terrible keyboards than this before, and I was fine with it and did not even complain. But the typing experience on the V3 has been very good. I like that the keys are large, that I don't get mistakes a lot, and the key travel, while not very deep, is sufficient enough for tactical satisfaction. It is also not obnoxiously loud. One thing I don't like with this keyboard though are the arrow keys. You have these up and down keys made by splitting one key in half. Sure, I have typed with smaller keys before, but all the keys were consistently small. This difference in size is a little bit disorienting with the two big left and right keys, but that's just a small deal. On a positive, the keyboard is backlit. No stage lighting though, but that is not important for me. I would like to point out this microphone hole near the keyboard. It is a strategically appropriate position for receiving voice, but every time I type, I always mistake it for some dirt that I end up making brushing gestures. But that's just a derpy thing on my part. Again, not a big deal. The trackpad found on the V3 is very superb. Now let me preface this section by saying that I am spoiled by the trackpad on the MacBook Pro. And I was thinking that I would end up just using a mouse for this laptop, but I was completely wrong. It is spacious, smooth, and very responsive. The left and right button clicks are well constructed, as they are not mushy and are not also easy to trigger by mistake. The tap to click is accurate and recognizes the taps effectively, that overall you can efficiently navigate through your computer with it. I mostly use the tap to click as it is that good. Executing commands with multiple fingers like scrolling and zooming is actually very good too. But there is a catch. In the general OS interface and the so-called Metro apps, the gestures are superbly responsive with no noticeable latency. But on desktop apps, it is just totally crappy. Let us look at some comparative examples. Scrolling in the Metro Reader app versus scrolling in the Adobe Reader. Scrolling in the New Edge browser versus scrolling in the Chrome browser. Scrolling in a Metro Calendar app versus scrolling in Outlook desktop app. So I guess this is not a problem with the trackpad itself, but optimizations with the OS, especially with the new Windows 10. We can just hope that the updates will be done to iron this out. I am enjoying this trackpad, so much so that I just discovered by accident that you can actually perform 3-finger gestures on Windows, because I was playfully swiping on the trackpad. Let's talk about performance. The configuration I have here is a 5th generation i5 5200U CPU with an 8GB RAM. The Core i5 is sufficient enough for the common productivity tasks, some advanced applications, and light games. Although the CPU is a low-voltage processor, it is powerful enough for my specific needs and desktop lifestyle. I am the kind of person who likes to run things simultaneously and put a lot of programs just minimized. In most of my usage scenario, I leave some YouTube videos playing in the background while working on something using Word or PowerPoint with a lot of Chrome windows and tabs open. And then from time to time check some updates in my email, Facebook, and Instagram. This is pretty much aided with the 8GB RAM. There is a Core i7 option too, and the laptop can be upgraded up to 16GB of RAM for a better performance. The configuration I have is also fairly capable of doing some advanced applications like photo and video editing. I use this laptop to make this video. While the video editing itself is a very smooth experience, the rendering is gonna take a lot of time to accomplish. It also takes up the full power of the CPU, thus you won't be able to do things on the side while waiting for the video to finish. I ended up leaving it rendering overnight. One thing I would like to point out though is that the V3 will mostly come with a 5400 RPM hard disk drive. The one I have is a 1TB. Yes, it is plenty spacious, good for file storage, but if you're tech savvy, you would know that solid-state drives or SSDs are preferable for the OS and applications, as it will speed up boot times, opening of applications, and overall experience. It is highly recommended to upgrade to an SSD. I have mentioned earlier that I replaced the DVD drive with an SSD, which means that the unit I have here has both an HDD and SSD. I place the Windows OS and all of my apps and programs in the SSD and keep my files in the hard disk drive. So that means I do not have to compromise between speed and capacity. It might be interesting for some that this laptop also comes with an NVIDIA GeForce 940M dedicated GPU with 2GB of VRAM. For most, this will concern playing games, as those are the notable graphically intensive tasks. Now, I'm not a gamer in the way that most would define what a gamer is, but I do play my fair share of gaming, a lot of which are not really that demanding. Games from the Windows Store run very smoothly with no problems at all. So far, I haven't encountered any slowdown. You can most likely play a lot of the older games at high settings. Recent games might be a different story though, but considering this laptop, which is not a high-end dedicated gaming machine, and the GPU being an entry-level chip, tweaking to lower settings is going to be expected. A lot of people are interested in recording their games nowadays, but keep in mind that those software do reduce the frame rates of the games. While it is possible to do, you will have to do a lot of lowering of quality to maintain good frame rates. Let's talk about audio. The speakers are mounted at the bottom, which means you cannot hear it if you put it in a cushioned surface, like I tend to do. The speakers are just your typical laptop speakers. It is not horrible, but it is nothing special, although I find that it does reproduce the midsection with some degree of fidelity. That means vocals, stringed instruments, piano melodies, and the like are appreciable. Don't expect too much on the highs and bass. Hooking up external speakers or headphones will still be your best choice for a good audio experience. The battery life is not very long, at around 2 to 3 hours at maximum brightness with Wi-Fi on, doing browsing and productivity tasks. But that is quite expected for this kind of laptop, which is not considered an ultrabook. so you will need to carry around its charger with it and position yourself near an outlet. The power brick is actually small, so it does not add a lot of weight. But this thick cable though, well, at least the thick part of the cable is not long. There are some noteworthy small things that I'd like to mention for this laptop. The Wi-Fi at the beginning would at times disconnect for no reason, which required a restart, but this was resolved by updating the drivers for the Wi-Fi adapter. So make sure your drivers are up to date by going to Device Manager, especially if you are like me who got the laptop with Windows 8.1 pre-installed and then updated to Windows 10. I had the same issue with the Bluetooth just going missing from the options menu. That was also resolved by updating the drivers. The webcam is terrible, but your face will still be recognizable for video calls. Just make sure you get plenty of illumination. You cannot open the bottom lid and access internals intuitively. Being handy and some prying is needed. Lastly, there is a lot of Acer preloaded programs which may be typical for Acer. You can be tech savvy and remove them, but I just keep them out of sight and pretend they are not there. They are not persistent though. Just say no to them doing anything and they won't bother you anymore. In summary, the Acer V3 574 is a very good all-around laptop offering sufficient performance and more, with well above average capabilities in a polished, sophisticated design. Yes, there are a few nitpicks, but most of them are not really deal breakers and are understandable cons for this price range. It will be suitable for students, professionals, and the general consumer looking for an affordable sort of portable large laptop that does not have much compromises. Some reasons why you might want to consider other laptops are if you require a color-accurate screen or a more powerful CPU and GPU, but those are specialized requirements that will direct you to invest on higher-end and pricier models. But if you want something at a reasonable value, the Acer V3 574 is a good option to consider. This concludes my review. I hope you liked it. If not, please be constructive in your criticisms. I am also open to questions. Leave all of them in the comments down below. Thanks for watching!